Japanese people of Reddit, what Western foods seem disgusting and or weird to you? We had an exchange student from Japan 15 years ago. We went to a pizza party with all the other exchange students and host families. Our exchange student ordered a plain pizza with no cheese and no tomato sauce, and the chef was like, "Then what the heck am I supposed to put on it? Left beef." I went to a big physics conference where they served bagels and cream cheese during the coffee break. The cream cheese came in those little plastic single serving ramekins. A bunch of Japanese people were standing around the table eating the cream cheese by the spoonful with looks of puzzled disgust. I'll never forget that. It was freaking hilarious. On the flip side, I definitely got laughed at for doing similar things when I visited Asia. A bunch of Japanese people were standing around the table eating the cream cheese by the spoonful with looks of puzzled disgust. When I was little, I did a cultural exchange with a Japanese family. Like any good Canadian, I sent them maple syrup. None of that Aunt Jemima's abomination. The real stuff. As part of my package. The note I got back was beautifully written: "Thank you for your gift. We loved the maple syrup but couldn't quite drink a whole glass." I can only imagine the discussion around the dinner table as this Japanese family tried our Canadian juice. I came to Canada from Japan when I was in elementary school. At the time, I thought a few foods were weird. Root beer, tastes like medicine. Peanut butter, my school offered craft brand and it was too sweet. Celery with peanut butter and raisins on it. Oatmeal, if it's cooked, because the texture is just so gross and I still don't like it. Cakes with too much icing, like full of buttercream or plain icing sugar decorations on them. Recently, I saw marshmallow fluff at the supermarket and it doesn't sound or look appetizing at all. For some background on this, the standard flavor for children's cough syrup and cold medication in Japan is root beer. You know how there's that one kind of nasty default cherry flavor that immediately makes you think of cough syrup in the West? That's how root beer tastes to the Japanese. We chided my Japanese exchange sister into trying Swiss cheese. Mind you, she spoke very good English, but she tasted that one little nibble of Swiss cheese, and our language all but abandoned her. Her response to this bite of cheese was blunt, simple, and perfectly expressive of her opinion of Swiss cheese. "Not food. Not food. You gaff. Black." I think you mean goaded. Chide means to scold someone. I housed two Japanese girls on a basketball exchange. We gave them frosted mini wheats for breakfast one morning, my favorite, and they thought they were absolutely disgusting. I live in Japan and most Japanese people hate sweet things for breakfast. Miso soup, rice, and fish is a really common breakfast. I love eating fruit in the morning, but so many of my friends here think it's bizarre. Japanese here. When I was living with a host family, they served pork chop with applesauce. Is this common? I think it's kinda weird since I associate applesauce as kind of a baby food. Also, those cranberry jelly thing for Thanksgiving. Otherwise, as others mentioned, root beer tastes like medicine. Licorice, overly sweet candies are weird, unpalatable to me. Fair foods are weird, like elephant ear, but it seems like it's weird to Americans too. So, all of my coworkers are thoroughly weirded out by root beer. I brought some root beer candies, among other flavors, to share after a trip to my home country. Every single person said they tasted like medicine. More for me, at least. I'm in the UK where we don't really have root beer, but I got to try some once and I thought it tasted exactly like the kind of mouthwash they give you at the dentist. Yet despite that, I thought it tasted really good, whereas the crap they give you at the dentist does not. My husband is Japanese and we currently live in Japan. He hates root beer, black licorice, Dr. Pepper, peanut butter, says it's too sweet, ketchup chips, the flavor is too strong, blue cheese, and cinnamon. Get peanut butter that is just peanuts and salt. Brands like Skippy are too sweet. My old Japanese roommate said they felt sick when they saw me drinking a Mountain Dew and eating cold pizza for breakfast. I felt sick too, but not like illness sick, but like yike sick. So sick in fact that I did a kickflip off my porch and landed, sitting, on my BMX and then popped a wheelie while I rode off to work. But the first part's actually true. I love how you threw the trademark symbol on there to be extra radical. I respect Western culture, and their food is fine, but the proportions are so big. A medium-sized pizza is equivalent to at least 1.5 large pizzas in Japan. No exaggeration. Either our pizzas are small or yours are massive. This is more of a weird thing from Japan, but I was also shocked when rice wasn't an available option at many restaurants. I had to go out of my way, buy a rice cooker and make it myself. PS. The bags of rice were massive as well, and ended up giving the rest to my friend when moving back to Japan. I kept the rice cooker. The big cooker was actually helpful. The large bags of rice are mainly just because rice doesn't really go bad easily, so you might as well get a lot of it and not have to buy rice for a year. Back in September I did an exchange from Canada to Japan, but there was a week before when I was staying in a hotel in Tokyo. Sunshine Prince Hotel 10/10 would go again. But one thing I found weird was at the breakfast buffet they had traditional Japanese breakfast items and then they had Western breakfast items. The only thing was they didn't really know what was in a Western breakfast, as I one morning had pasta with French fries. I had the same experience in Singapore. The hotel would have spaghetti and French fries at the breakfast bar. Nothing to go with the spaghetti really. The French fries I guess were their shot at hash browns. Just kind of weird considering Singapore is pretty up on American culture. Also this hotel was alright, staff was great. I just hated that they had velcro on the sheets and comforter edges to keep them together. I can't tell you how many times I woke up with the velcro scratches on my body. Oh. My grandma is from Okinawa. She said baking was strange to her. Cookies and cakes and things like that. Also when people dump soy sauce on white rice and just eat it. That's very strange to her. A Vietnamese comedian in Melbourne, either Andrew or Hung La, I can't remember which, says risotto is Italian for who fricked up the rice. Though I'm not Japanese, I live in Japan and have a load of Japanese friends and co-workers. When I went back to the UK for a short trip over Christmas, everyone kept asking me what the food was like. When I said it was delicious, everyone would look shocked and tell me that they had heard British food tasted disgusting. Someone also told me that they had a friend living in the UK who had a hard time adjusting because the food was so bad. According to my boyfriend, there's a chapter in the high school English textbook talking about how bad British food is, so he reckons that people just play up to this opinion even though the food isn't that bad. British food being bland is widely held, if ignorant, opinion. I've had several quite tasty meals that were British. I'm Japanese and I guess we eat quite unusual things, but what I found disturbing a few years ago was black pudding from England. I ever knew what the ingredients were, so I used to eat it. When I realized it was made of pig's blood, I was disgusted. Now it's hard for me to even look at it. Give a look to blood sausage sometime. You'll probably like it if you like liver. My Japanese wife hates refried beans. This is an opinion shared by many of her Japanese expat friends over here. Something about the light saltiness and the texture. I'm pretty sure I'd die without refried beans, but I'm Mexican and it's a staple of my diet. Native JP, but maybe it's tainted goods being partially raised in Canada. Weirdest Western food to me equals mountain oysters, cottage cheese, canned hamburgers. But it's not to say I don't find JP delicacies or foreign tourist attractions gross either. Wasp crackers, zazamashi, bilavi, shirako, shiakara, pufferfish, etc. Mountain oysters and canned hamburgers are weird to 99% of Westerners, too. Japanese American here. Chicken and waffle drenched in syrup confuses the frick out of me. I enjoy fried chicken. I love waffles with syrup. Makes no sense to mix it all up on a single plate. As a Canadian, I love chicken and waffles, but the syrup needs to be real 100% maple syrup. Be gone with that simulated maple imposter syrup. Not Japanese, I'm a whitey from the USA. You can chant it now, go ahead. My now wife is Japanese from Japan, and her family who came to the wedding were from Japan and spoke no English. It made for some fun. One of the most surreal parts was what I saw because we had both sushi and raw vegetables with rancher snacks out at our small family after everything was over as a celebration of the mixture of our two cultures. My family were all eating their creamy dipped broccoli heads, looking suspiciously at those weirdos eating the hunks of raw fish with rice, who were pointing and whispering at these odd Americans who were taking uncooked chunks of vegetables from a big plate and dunking them in salad dressing and then just eating them raw like that. WTF. There was very little mixing between snacks. You should come to Thanksgiving with my family then. We've got a Japanese guy who is a trained French chef. We have everything from the most perfectly moist turkey with bread stuffing, gravy, and homemade cranberry sauce. Then we have sashimi, ebi fry, and sushi rice right next to it. Finally we have potato gratin and some crazy French pastry things every year. Goddamn, I love Thanksgiving. My friend's kids came from Japan to visit. They hated black licorice, ate a half gallon of strawberry ice cream between the two of them, didn't care much for fast food hamburgers, were weirded out when my husband made udon with a miso soup base, and tried Heinz 57 sauce, then proceeded to put it on everything and even took bottles of it home with them. Native Japanese here. Ranch dressing seems to gross out many Japanese people, from experience. Another one are California rolls, along with those strange tangy yum yum sauce that often comes with the salad at American sushi restaurants. I seem to remember a similar thread a ways back in which someone commented that they had a Japanese exchange student who started crying when forced to try pumpkin pie, which, I suppose, is reasonable considering how upset I'd be if someone made me eat a vegetable dessert. But pumpkin pies are my second favorite pies. I enjoy my sashimi, therefore I enjoy the clean, sweet taste of raw salmon, but the idea of smoked salmon was confusing. Then I actually saw it in person and it grossed me out. It looks like raw salmon. It tasted sort of burnt and fishy. Smoked taste, I suppose. Not what I was expecting at all. Then they told me that they put it on a bagel with cream cheese. After several years of trying it here and there, I finally started to like it with sauce and malt vinegar, white pepper and a side of creamy scrambled eggs, whipped with soy sauce. Ironically, this was made for me by my Japanese meal who had married into an English family. Not Japanese, but I grew up with Japanese exchange students. Not a single one would drink root beer. They all said the same thing, that it tasted just like medicine and refused to drink it. They ate the crap out of McDonald's and junk food like potato chips though. I'm German and didn't grow up with root beer. My so is half American and did grow up with it. I've been to the States a couple times over the last years where I had the pleasure to try different brands of root beer and didn't like a single drop of any of them. They taste like Crest toothpaste, which in turn tastes horrid. Absolutely not for me, and one of the things you have to experience as kid to be able to appreciate when older. Asking my co-workers. Rice pudding, like with milk and sugar. Coke flavored gummies. Black licorice. Sauce. Westerner living in Japan. There are tons of cola gummies by many different brands in Japan, so they must be very popular there. I'm Japanese but spent most of my life in the States, so I'm pretty used to Western food. In my opinion, Japanese candy is superior to candy in most other places, but since I don't have regular access to Japanese candy, I have to eat the American stuff. It's not bad, the Japanese stuff is just better. From my limited experience, the fruit flavoring in Japanese candy is much closer to the actual taste of the fruit than American candies. Like, there were these little individually wrapped fruit flavored hard candies a Japanese co-worker shared with me once, and those were surprising with how much more real they tasted. Like, it wasn't just red flavor, green flavor, etc. It was really nice. I'm not Japanese but my husband is. We're newlyweds and we're planning his first trip out of the country to go meet my family in the US in August. A couple months ago we went to an Outback steakhouse. His comments, after I explained that it's not really Australian. Is this what American food is like? I don't think I can go to America. The Japanese forfeited their right to consider Western foods disgusting when they invented natto, like snotty alien eggs. Japanese here. When I went to the US the first time, all the food coloring was weird. Please understand my confusion when I first saw neon pink icing on a cupcake. From Japan, macaroni and cheese absolutely. It's too sweet and sometimes done with only one color. Yellow. No other toppings. Very surprised many people eat ready meal macaroni and cheese in US, which is so cheap. It doesn't go with my preference though. I never had sweet mac and cheese before. People putting stuff in their rice. Eating food with rice is definitely acceptable /10. But when people just douse their rice with mayonnaise or other condiments and just eat rice like that, I still get grossed out. When I first heard of people mixing it with milk and sugar, I seriously thought my leg was being pulled. And oatmeal. Even after becoming a lot more Americanized, 25 plus years, I still can't do oatmeal. The texture is gross. And some people mentioned natto or yamamo as a comparison, but at least it's consistent. Oatmeal has that odd mixture of liquidy, chewy, and crunchy which I just cannot do. Root beer also used to gross me out, but it's now one of my sodas of choice. American cakes are just way too sweet and heavy. On the flip side though, I love PB&J sandwiches, gravy, barbecue sauce and muscle cars. I really want to visit the South and experience their cookouts. Douse their rice with mayonnaise or other condiments and just eat rice like that. I am grossed out. 2. I do not like the sushi that has mayonnaise on it, either. I moved to the US when I was in middle school, but the weirdest thing I saw in the US was when I saw my friend pour syrup on their bacon. Native Japanese people gets extremely disappointed from Thanksgiving foods, such things like turkey, mashed potato gravy, casserole, cranberry, etc., especially cornbread. I am a Japanese and I think it's very common for you to eat breads dipped in olive oil, but it's weird to me. It tastes good, but it's like eating rice dipped in soy sauce when we find a similar way in our culture. Japanese here, and I hate icing on cakes. That stuff is like hardened sugar, and I have never liked it. I lived in the States when I was a kid, but even during birthday parties, I would go in the corner to scrape icing off. I also don't understand what is appetizing about blue-green unnatural colors on sweets in general. That here, my son turned 1 in Japan and I invited all the neighbors over for his party. I had huge T-bones from base, about $15 each, and had 20 plus of them and burgers and hot dogs. All the neighbor kids ate the hot dog buns. No adult Japanese person ate any meat. A Vietnamese friend from the ship made a stir fry and some Japanese ate a little. I don't know if it was because one of those steaks would have been $hundreds out in the economy or they just couldn't eat that much meat at one time, but they touched none. We hosted a Japanese foreign exchange student for a while. We treated her to a lot of American classics. The one thing she could not wrap her head around was a root beer float. She said it was really weird to put ice cream and soda in that it tasted like medicine. It was a good, reputable, home brewed by the restaurant, root beer too. Studying abroad in Japan for the first time, I brought my host family a huge box of Jelly Belly jelly beans for my only age from American. There were 5 sisters under 17, so I figured candy would be a hit. They were. The youngest loved mixing the flavors together, until they got to root beer, which I had to explain, in Japanese, after like 2 years of high school Japanese, was not beer, or non-alcoholic beer, but root beer. I eventually ended up googling it and explaining. They weren't big fans of the flavor. Apparently Japanese cough medicine tastes like root beer. As it turns out, I have yet to see root beer while I have been in Tokyo for the past 4 months, so it's apparently universally unpopular. Japanese American, and have been living in Japan for a decade. Japanese people don't understand bright food coloring. Like, they see a 7-Eleven Slurpee and get totally freaked out. That is to be poison for you, they say, while eating kakigori, literally the same freaking thing. Also, amusingly enough, 7-Eleven is owned by the Japanese. They literally bought it from America. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.